For the next 30 minutes, we will explore the unexplained. From mysteries beyond our galaxy to ghostly phenomena in our own backyard, we will dive into our psychic abilities and explore everything from conspiracies to the just plain weird. Welcome to 30-odd minutes. If the truth is out there, we will find it. But only by sheer accident.
Welcome back to 30-odd minutes. It's great to have you here. We know you could be anywhere tonight, but you're here with us in this Celtic Irish woods with fairy folk all around us. That's what we're talking about tonight. Fairy, fae, wee folks, all those funny things that we're going to try to stumble through if I can talk. That's how it goes. It's live. What are you going to do? One take straight through, and yes, you can tell. Hey, we want to remind you, if you're watching the show live on the internet at 30oddminutes.com, you can join the chat room, and these folks over here will help you. Rob, Sarah, how are you?
All right.
Good. Excellent. Nice cut. Guess we're not going to find out how they're doing, are we, Andy? You good?
We're good.
You're good. Awesome. All right. Good deal. Well, tonight we are going to be talking. Yeah, we're done. We're done with them.
Good job, Andy.
Good job. We're on the ball. Yeah, so tonight we're going to talk about fairy folks. Actually, Rob, do you believe in fairies?
You mean the cartoon characters?
No, fairies.
Wimpy guys, or?
You know, every time you say that...
Little guys with wings?
Every time you say that, a fairy dies.
Oh.
I learned that from Peter Pan.
Sorry.
I do believe in fairies. I do. Because there's the concept across this great world of ours, they pop up in various cultures that had no contact with each other all around the world. In various time periods, there's a word for it in lots of languages and a cultural understanding of it. And tonight, we've got a great guest to talk about it. But first, we want you to know that we're here if you want to email us. And we also know that sometimes you don't even have a half hour. That's why we bring you
30-odd seconds.
30-odd seconds. In 1839, Dr. Henry Carpenter was buried here in his favorite dancing shoes with his best gold watch wound and placed in his pocket. He's buried alongside his second wife, Henrietta, who was 30 years his junior. The doctor divorced his first and third wives, and it's said that these massive stone slabs were placed around their graves to make sure that his ex-wives didn't ruin his fun in the afterlife. Locals say that they think the stone slabs are placed here so that his beautiful young wife wouldn't rise from the grave and leave the doctor all alone. Pretty odd.
His name was Thomas, not Henry.
Hey, great recovery, Andrew. Love it. Well done, sir. Well done. Hey, sometimes we don't get it right on the first take. That's why we have ways to make corrections. We did get an email this week. I want to let you know real quick. If you want to email us, info@30oddminutes.com. Send us your complaints, your fan mail, whatever. Hey, guys, this is Victor from Long Beach, California. All right, the LBC. I'm 17 years old. We're attracting teenagers. Key demographic coming up. And I had what is close to 14 years of fascination with the paranormal. That's, if I do my math, you were little, really little when you got into this. I didn't really start any kind of research until I was about 11 years old, and I've been doing what I love ever since. Anyways, I was wondering if you could have an episode which might range from ghost hunting basics to advanced tools. Love the show. Keep up the good work, and stay odd. That's our line. Thank you, Victor. We could definitely cover some paranormal investigation tools. In fact, if you hang in there, Victor, we might just do it tonight. And tonight we have a great guest. I'm really excited to bring this person in. Rosemary Ellen Guiley. She's one of the leading experts on the paranormal. Been doing this a long time. Authored more than 40 books on a wide range of paranormal topics, mystical, paranormal, supernatural, including the book and CD Fairy Magic, which we'll be talking about tonight. You've seen her on countless documentaries on various television networks. She's a regular on the lecture circuit. Oddballs, please put your hands together for Rosemary Ellen Guiley.
Yeah. Uh-oh. Oops.
Dude, where's the screen?
We forgot.
Holy cow. Oh, man.
A little late, sorry.
Okay, wait a minute. Let me try something. I got some fairy pixie dust here.
That'll do it.
Let me see if I got this. It does look like sugar. Let me see if I just sprinkle it. Hey, she's here.
Oh my God, I think the odd people have abducted me.
We have. Rosemary, how are you?
I'm doing great, Jeff.
Thank you so much for slumming it with us. This is so exciting.
My favorite activity tonight.
Well, right. I mean, where else would you be in this little town? So how did you even get started in fairies?
I had experiences when I was a kid. I had invisible playmates, and after I did research when I got older, I think that a lot of the invisible playmates that children have really are fairies. They're very attracted to children, and they love to play. They like a good joke, especially.
We love a good joke. That's
why I'm here.
We're in such good company. You know, we got fairies behind us here, which, right?
Oh, of
See,
course.
right?
Only certain people can see them.
Can you see them?
Sometimes.
Are they here?
They're everywhere.
Okay, all right. No, well, what are they? I mean, I was doing a little research. This is not my area of expertise, but I was doing a little bit of research, and it looks like it's a pretty broad definition depending on who you ask. What's your definition?
I think that they are inhabitants who live in a parallel dimension, and they have places on the earth that they come and go. In fairy lore, they live in trees, they live in mounds, in tunnels, and holes in the ground. But I think that they're literally a race in their own right, and they have interactions with us.
So like an elemental, is that?
An elemental is often classed as a type of fairy, you know, something associated with nature, with the woodlands. Fairies are described as little people, like the dwarves, like, you know, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs.
Right.
They're tiny little things, they're big things, they're ugly things, beautiful things. Not very many of them actually have wings, however. That was kind of an invention of Victorian art.
Huh. Okay. And but can they interact with us? Do they harm us? Do they help us?
Well, in fairy lore, actually, it's quite interesting. In earlier times, people were very afraid of fairies because it was widely believed that fairies really didn't care for human beings, and you had to be very careful about them. If you crossed them, they would do nasty things to you. They would, at the very least, play tricks. At the most, they could cause you serious trouble, bad health, financial ruin, even death sometimes.
It's so interesting. Now, it's when I think of fairies anyway, I often think of Celtic lore, the Irish, and you know that area of the world. Is that where we take most of our legend and lore from? Are these things popping up elsewhere?
Most of our fairy beliefs do come from Celtic lore, the ones that we're familiar with here in North America. But you know, the Native Americans have fairy lore too, the little people, strange little people who shape-shift, who live in the woods, who have magical powers.
Right.
Actually, you find these citizens of other realms throughout mythology around the world since ancient times.
And here in Massachusetts, and this is, hello, our good friend Chris Balzano, puckwudgies. Puckwudgies. Have you heard of puckwudgies?
I have indeed, yes.
Would that be like a fairy folk, a fae folk?
It could be classed
Okay.
as that. The category of fairies is very big.
Okay.
And it encompasses a lot of different kinds of entities. In fact, there are a lot of similarities between fairies and even some of the beings that people call ETs or aliens. So some of the beings that we may be contacting now and experiencing that we think come from outer space may actually have been called a fairy several hundred years ago.
See, that's really interesting. And let me just go back real quick, and because people could be going, puck what? You know, puckwudgies are from Wampanoag folklore, which is basically eastern Massachusetts. They believe these creatures could turn into balls of light. They were miniature Wampanoag people with magic abilities. They could help you. They could kill you. But by all accounts, very much the way people describe
very
fairies.
typical of fairies. They're shapeshifters, for one thing. They can assume various forms. They have supernatural powers. They can appear, disappear. They can transport themselves instantly someplace. And yes, they have great power. They can cause harm to human beings.
And so, but this isn't just Ireland. I mean, this is the Wampanoag really had no contact with the
They're
Irish
everywhere.
millennia ago. And so, but it's interesting that you bring up that they could be considered aliens, because we've been talking on this show anyway about how it's the perception of the eyewitness, right? It's the books you're reading, the movies you're watching, where, you know, maybe one person's alien is another person's fairy, is another person's ghost, you know, that kind of thing. So, I mean, do you think there's an actual extraterrestrial connection, or is it just the perception of people seeing these things?
I think that it might be our perception and interpretation. I think that human beings have core experiences throughout history. We're obviously interacting with some kind of otherworldly beings, and I think we've put labels on them, or descriptions, names even, that conform to our time and place in history. People tend to put fairies in something imaginative now, and yet the characteristics that they have with ETs, they come from a dark, mysterious place. The fairies came from inside the earth. The ETs come from outer space.
Right.
They have supernatural powers, being able to go through solid objects. They can bewitch and glamorize people, that is, put them into trances or spells. The fairies cast spells, the ETs paralyze you and transport you someplace. The fairies took you off to their world in the mound. They're very interested in human babies and in reproducing with humans. So those are very strong characteristics shared by both. It gets very difficult sometimes to draw a line and say one is one thing and one is another.
Right. Well, and we can't put these things in a beaker just yet, right? I mean, that's kind of the nature of this. But can we communicate with them? I mean, is there a way?
I think we can, yes, absolutely. Most fairy experiences are spontaneous. You're, for example, out in the woods somewhere and might be in just kind of a nice, light, happy state, and suddenly you see something that you can't explain, a little person, for example.
Right.
I've had experiences like that myself. You can also meditate. You can try and tune into fairies, like go to a place that is known to have fairies in folklore, and go into meditation and try and communicate with them. And oftentimes you'll get answers, or you'll get some sort of response back, like impression, an image, even a sighting of one, for example.
See, that's amazing. That these things that we talk about, we read about them in children's books. We hear them as the term every day, sometimes a derogatory term, as we heard earlier. But it is part of our collective consciousness, right? And so why not? Now, are there hotspots? I mean, you had mentioned places where legends come from. Are there hotspots where we can find these creatures?
Yes, there are areas where they tend to congregate, and they like to be in wooded areas, by springs, by pools of water, deeply forested areas. But I think also that geophysical characteristics have a lot to do with what attracts any otherworldly entity to a place. If there's a lot of magnetic material in the soil, magnetite, iron, minerals, mining, things like that, these tend to be hot spots for all kinds of paranormal activity. Here in Massachusetts, we've got that famous Bridgewater Triangle that,
Sure.
that covers what I call broad spectrum paranormal, and there are certain characteristics to the land that I think enable things to come through these doorways into our world. The Catskills, for example, in upstate New York, are famous for their fairy lore. The Indians had long, long legends about little people. In fact, Henry Hudson is rumored to have had an encounter with little gnomes that made a beer that when his men drank it, they shrank in size to the same size as the gnomes.
I like these fairies already. So the Catskills, not just like old Jewish entertainers. I mean, it's also for fairies. Well, that's good. Actually, we do have a question in the chat room. What's going on there, Sarah?
They do. They want to know, so clearly fairies are good and bad, so they want to know, how can you tell? Like, are good fairies always cute? Are bad fairies always ugly? How can you tell?
In Celtic lore, the bad fairies are ugly. They're wicked-looking, dark, malevolent, or misshapen in some way. But actually, even good-looking fairies, if they get angry at you, can certainly trip you up a bit. So the key is in their actions rather than their appearance, and what they might sort of be emanating. But in folklore, the number one rule is you don't get the fairies mad for any reason whatsoever.
Good policy.
They tend to be look at humans with a lot of disfavor. They think we're not as good as them. And so if we irritate them by messing up their travel ways, their ferry tracks, putting a house down on one of their pieces of turf, things like that, then they'll cause problems. Amazing. Otherwise, they leave us alone.
Which is good. Now, in the realm of paranormal investigation, there are people with a wide range of beliefs when they go into, say, a haunted building, or building they perceive to be haunted. Demons, of course, come up, ghosts, poltergeists, spirits, impressions that might be there, but perhaps fairies too, perhaps elementals that might be lingering. Is that something you've encountered?
Absolutely. In fact, I had them in my own house when I lived in Maryland. I became aware of what I thought was an elemental because when I could see him clairvoyantly, he seemed to be literally made out of leaves and twigs and things like that. It was like he was composed of the very stuff of nature itself. And in tuning into this entity, I had the impression that he mostly lived outside in the backyard, but he had access into the lower level of the house through, I guess, an interdimensional portal of some sort. And he would come into the lower level, and he liked to hang out there. I was not the only one who could perceive him. People who came over, if they went downstairs and they had the right attunement, could tune into him too. So an investigator going into a place like that who could pick up on that kind of entity might consider it to be, you know, fairy haunted, literally.
Did he mess with you in any way, or was he just there?
Well, he seemed to like me, and I would leave little offerings for him. I would put out, it's traditional that you put out little offerings of food. They like sweet things like cream and chocolates and cookies and things like that. So you leave a little bit of food offering for them, and they don't literally take the food per se, but they take the essence out of the food. So there's a very strong belief in fairy folklore, for example, that if food hits the floor in a kitchen or a dining room, you leave it for the fairies.
Okay.
And once the fairies have had it as unfit for man or animals, it's theirs, they've taken it. But they like offerings like that. But don't give them money, they get insulted.
You can give us money, just saying. We'll be happy to take it and we won't haunt you. No, that's, but you know, of course, there's also vermin, right? I mean, so
they like shiny things, but boy,
Right.
if you leave like change out for them, it's insulting to them.
Too funny. Well, you brought us an EVP, and actually before we play that, we're going to get the clip ready. Andrew, if you wouldn't mind bringing this up. Thank you. Here, check this out. Can you please explain what this is?
This device is called a radio sweep box. They're popularly known as Frank's box, but Frank Sumption, who is the namesake of the Frank's box, did not make this particular one. This was made by Ron Ricketts of Dallas, Texas. It's called the Mini Box. And what it does is it sweeps the AM band radio very rapidly to create a noise matrix that you hope to get either EVP or real-time two-way communication with beings in other realms. That could include entities in higher realms, maybe even human beings in parallel dimensions, dead people, even entities like fairies. You know, maybe
Right.
they might be able to communicate something across this. Well, I had an experience recently in Moundsville, West Virginia, at the West Virginia Penitentiary
Sure.
there. It's historical. You know, investigators love to go there because there's a lot of phenomena. And I had this device with me, two other investigators. We're going to play a clip that is very typical of what a fairy would do.
Okay.
And I don't know who did this. It could have been just like a mischievous ghost or other person, entity, but very typical of fairies. While I was playing this box in a particularly haunted area of the prison, it quit working, and I hadn't touched it.
Right.
And when I examined it, I found that the volume knob had been mysteriously turned all the way down. Hadn't touched the box. It just quit making the scanning noise.
Right.
So I turned it back up. And we're not getting anything across the box. No voices, nothing unusual. The box quits working again. I look at it, and there's a jack for speakers here. That's how you hear things, through an external speaker. The jack's been pulled out. So I plugged it back in, and so on the clip you'll hear me say, the box cut out again. You know, now it's twice this has happened. So I just say out to the room, is that you? Are you messing around with our equipment? And nothing happens, and another investigator says, you don't want to talk to us, do you? And then I said, are you playing tricks with our equipment? And then we get the answer, and I'll save that for the end.
Cool. Can we hear it? Here we go.
And that's the box scanning there. That's the noise it makes.
Right.
It's just me making noise. And the box cut out again. I've got the volume turned all the way up. Is that you? Are you doing this to the box? And the scan starts again, which is what it should be doing. The plug was pulled halfway out. Okay, now twice the box was cut out, and I found the volume turned down the first time, and the plug pulled part way out the second time. You don't want to talk to us, do you? Are you playing tricks with our machines?
That's awesome. Twilight Zone, yeah.
It's an exceptional clip because it's literally, I shouldn't say impossible, but it's extremely unlikely that you would get a stretch of music, because when these devices scan the AM band, they're moving so fast that you might get a note or two of music, but not something that stretches across the sweep itself. And then to get Twilight Zone music. Right. Now, it actually went on longer than that, but we all burst out laughing, so I cut the clip before we drowned out the music. But it was like, yeah, we are messing with your equipment. Right. You're in the Twilight Zone.
And this can be funny. I mean, ghosts aren't always scary, frightening things. I mean, to play the Twilight Zone, I think is...
It's very trickster, and that's very typical of something that a fairy would do.
Right. Well, I mean, I can tell you right now, if I were to die, I would be messing with people's Frank's boxes that way, too. Yeah, Matt, would you mind grabbing the box? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming along. Yeah, no, in the whole field of paranormal research has come such a long way, and in some respects, you know, we've got the internet, we can share information like never before, and there's more people doing this. The subject's so popular now with all the television shows and radio and everything else that's going on. And yet, one of the things I've seen is that there seems to be a lack of prominent women. Now, you've been doing this a lot longer than the TV shows, I mean, and all that other stuff, but why do you think there's so few women that are becoming prominent in paranormal research?
Well, the paranormal in general has tended to be a boys' playground for a long time, but I've been very pleased to see a lot of women come into it. I've been working in the paranormal as a researcher and author since the early 1980s. I mean, I was in it long before it got to be hot or cool. Yeah. And women, by their nature, I think, tend to stay in the background more than men. We're very interested. There are a lot of women doing research, but they tend to be quieter about it. And I try and encourage more women to come to the forefront, to talk about their work, to get the speaking engagements, to be on radio shows, to make a contribution to the field. I get a lot of comments, both from men and women, that they're very happy to see at least a few women in the field. I know that there's more out there. It's almost like the silent partners in this research.
Right, and you know, I mean, when I go to a conference, and I know you go to a lot of these conferences too, do you think it's fair to say 50, maybe even a slight majority are women?
Absolutely.
I mean, so they're there.
Women are obviously interested,
yeah.
and women are very competent investigators. I have been told at times in the past that you know, I should leave the technical stuff to the guys and, you know, do something else.
Right.
And that's not true. Women can be very competent with equipment and investigations and setting up very solid research procedures, and you know, we have something to say.
Here's the other part of it too, is that I think that sorry to stereotype, but I think women tend to be more in tune with emotion and things like that than men. Just broad sweeping strokes here. But at the same time, a lot of what we're doing in paranormal research really isn't science per se, right? There's a lot of belief behind what we're doing. We're trying to reach across with EVP, with devices like you brought up, and we're trying to make a connection. And it's not really science. There's emotion and feeling that has to be behind it. Intent has to be part of this if you're going to bridge that gap. And I think some people are fooling themselves when they think they're doing pure scientific research, and which is a shame. And it's okay what we're doing. My point is not, you know, stop doing it. My point is just to recognize that it's not really pure science. What it is intent, and I think women have a great role to play in that. You know, because think of how some people just tend to open up more to women than men. So if it's guys asking all the questions out there, maybe it's time to if you've got a paranormal research group, maybe it's time to let some of the women start asking the questions and see if you get better results.
Well, actually, when I hear groups say that they only take a scientific approach to the paranormal, I kind of get a twinge inside, because they're only looking at half the picture.
Right.
The paranormal is, by its very nature, subjective. And there's a lot of it that cannot be pinned down. It is experienced through subjective encounters that individuals filter, and then we report back, and that becomes part of our mythology, folklore, and anecdotal evidence in support of things, which has sort of a quasi-scientific role. It's very difficult to try and examine the paranormal scientifically, and I think it's important to have this balance between the two. You do need the subjective.
Right.
My work has really never been about proving the paranormal, because for me it's existed since I was a kid. I'm much more interested in the how and why people have experiences, and I look for patterns. I like to collect big databases and then sort things out into patterns that try and tell us something. Are there places that are conducive to experiences? Are there times of season or year, day, night? Does gender make a difference? Age, environmental conditions, lunar phases, all sorts of things that may be able to predict certain kinds of experiences. But then the important thing is, Jeff, what do we do with that?
Right.
How do we integrate it? What does that teach us? What does that tell us? How do we become enlightened? And you're not going to get that out of a pile of statistics. So there's a value to both sides of the coin. And I think that having an approach to investigation that incorporates that intuitive side, that takes the subjective into account, is very important.
Right, right. Do we have another question in our chat room?
Yeah, we have a lot, actually.
All right, great.
First of all, one chatter says Rosemary's great. She's a great spokesperson for women.
Aww.
More interested in the field. And there's a question about food. Do they eat, and what do they like to eat?
Fairies.
Fairies.
Right.
Fairies, in fairy lore, if you get abducted into fairyland, their food is reported to be exquisite. It's very similar to human food, only you can imagine the scent, the flavor, the texture, everything to be magnified, many, many times. It's irresistible. But if you eat it, you are trapped in fairyland.
A lot of calories? I mean, I've been trying to watch myself,
Actually, I think it's more like a disappearing food.
Oh, okay.
It makes you disappear.
Oh, all right. Well, maybe.
But in our world, for example, if people have household fairies that are household helpers, putting out sweet things is very good. They love the cookie, the honey, milk and honey, for example, that sort of thing, little bits of chocolate. They don't seem to be big on meat.
All right. What about beer?
Beer, oh yes, fairies do love a good brew.
All right. Hey, we have one more quick question in the chat room. What's going on?
They want to know if you know about changelings and whether or not fairies are involved with switching babies at birth.
Oh.
The changeling is a very important part of fairy lore. Fairies are believed, and here's a big parallel with ETs, fairies are believed to have these sickly children, and they covet the beautiful human babies. So they come in at night to a newborn's crib and take the human baby and leave their sickly baby in its place. Very similar to what ET contactees say when they're asked to breed hybrids, and then they're taken aboard some ship and shown sickly alien babies and told that the aliens want to mingle their gene pool with ours in order to strengthen their offspring. So there's some very strange parallels. Now, in times past, the changeling could have explained things like birth defects that wouldn't become known until a child would get old enough, for example, speech or hearing or motor abilities, that sort of thing.
Right.
People would say, oh, it's a changeling. Sudden changes in personality, even onset of certain illnesses, and of course unexplained death could all be passed off on the changeling.
All this stuff, that's what's so amazing about this subject, is that there's so many facets that intersect. And when I first got into this, I was interested purely in ghosts, and I thought that's all there was to it. And then you start to realize that you can't stick to one subject, and I think that's awesome. If you look at your catalog, your incredible catalog of books, 40 plus now, you've covered it all: werewolves and fairies and ghosts and witches and UFOs. I know you're prominent in that field as well. What's that?
Oh my!
Oh my! I know. Yeah, that's right. Thank you, Matt. Yeah, no,
and they're all interrelated.
They are. You're right. They really are. And that's one of the things we're trying to do here is talk about all these subjects. And I think that's that's the contribution we can make, is to keep that dialogue going. And so I think it's just great that you're doing that. You're a woman that's been doing it, not since it's been cool, before it was cool. And thank you so much for doing it. What else do you have coming up?
Here in Massachusetts, I'm going to be out on the Cape in Barnstable tomorrow evening for Derek Bartlett's Capers group. I'm giving a lecture on demons.
Great.
My new book is The Encyclopedia of Demons and Demonology.
Right.
So I'm doing a lot on that. I have some fantastic new projects in the works. I'm co-authoring a book with George Norrie on high-tech spirit communications. I'm co-authoring a book with Phil Imbrogno on the Jinn, which is a very little-known entity.
Right.
And the Ouija board.
And the Ouija board. For more information, go to 30 Odd Minutes. You can find out everything Rosemary's up to. Thank you very much, Rosemary. Until next time, stay odd. Yeah.